So how much do you know about pizza dough? Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Mostly From Scratch. I am your host, Mr. Munchies. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. Today's episode, I am going to be telling you everything you need to know about pizza dough. The first half, I'm going to go over the ingredients. Second half, I'm going to go over cooking technique. All right, so let's get into this. The first ingredient, and I feel is probably one of the most important ingredients, is your water. If you ask anybody what makes New York pizza crust so good, first thing out of their mouth is going to be the water. New York has one of the best city waters in the United States. That's because their water comes directly out of the Catskills Mountains and they don't have to process it that much. My city, it's like pool water. It's terrible. It has so much chlorine in it. So if you have an RO system in your house, that's perfect. If you don't, buy yourself some spring water or some purified water to make your dough with, because the chlorine in the water will basically kill your yeast. All right. Our next ingredient is your flour. Flour is very important for not only your dough but your end product as well, your crust. If you want a good, authentic, chewy pizza crust that's nice and crispy on the outside and has that nice fluffy bread texture on the inside, you got to use bread flour. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use all-purpose or self-rising, but you're not going to get a true pizza crust. And if you are a true pizza enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to use bread flour. Now, there's many different types of bread flours that you can buy. There are high gluten bread flours that have 14 to 15% protein in them. Whole wheat flour has 14%. This bread flour here, 12 to 13%. This one has 12%. This is the Pillsbury. And then your all-purpose has about 10%. Self-rising, 9 to 11, so about 10%. And then you go into your cake and pastry, which is very low end. Now, they do have extremely high-end gluten or protein flours that have anywhere from 65 to 77% protein in them. Now, I've never used it. One of these days I'm going to get my hand on some and, give it a try. But, your typical bread flour, like I said, is going to have about 12%. Now, there are many different types of bread flour. This is the Pillsbury. This is what I typically use, or the King Arthur. They're just almost exactly the same. Some of the King Arthur you can find that is unbleached and 100% organic if you want to use the organic stuff. And then this is put out by Pizza Craft. This is what they call 00 bread flour. All right, the difference between the 00 and your regular bread flour is the 00 has been milled down to a finer particle. It's very, very fine. It will make your dough feel much more silky. Your end product, your crust, there'll be a different feel to it. There'll be I really can't describe, I can't describe it at all. It's just, let me just say, you will get a different product. It's not going to be extreme, but when you bite into it, you will feel the difference. It will give you even your crust is going to be a little bit smoother feeling to the tooth. I've used it a couple times. Personally, I didn't care for it. It's expensive too. I mean, this bag here costs as much as this bag here. So, it's up to you to kind of find the flour that you like to use and then stick with it. All right, move on to our next ingredient. Yeast. All right, yeast is very important. The fresher, the better. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use yeast that's a couple months old. This jar here will probably last me almost a year. I can probably make about, I'll say, 12, 15 batches of dough with this before it gets down to the point where I know it's starting to go bad. and it's not really that it goes bad, but it gets old, and you'll know that when you start to bloom your yeast on how big your head is. Now, a lot of people, a lot of recipes that you will see, they will add their dry yeast in with their dry ingredients, mix it together, and then add your water. I don't particularly care to do that. I like to bloom my yeast first. I feel it gives me a better end product, okay? Sugar is your next ingredient. Yeast needs two things. It needs heat and it needs food. When you're blooming your yeast, you want to have your water no warmer than 135 degrees, or else you're going to start killing your yeast. Mine is typically at about 130. So there's your heat and moisture, and then your sugar feeds the yeast so it can start producing the CO2. The CO2 is what creates the bubbles in your dough. All right, so that's what makes it nice and fluffy and everything. Your next ingredient is oil. Oil will play a big part on your finished product. Well, not so much your finished product, but your dough. Too much oil and your dough is going to be very wet, and it'll kind of fall apart and it'll be hard to manage. No oil will make your dough a little stiffer, a little firmer when you're working it. I typically use 1 tablespoon of oil in my pizza dough. Salt. Salt is kind of, but not really that important. You don't have to add salt to your dough mix. You wouldn't miss it. But if you add too much salt to your dough mix, it's going to make it very hard, depending on how old you are. If you have kids, or if you were a kid at one point, you may remember doing Christmas ornaments where you mixed up some flour and a bunch of salt, made a dough out of it, and then pushed your hand in it and painted it and gave it to mom and dad for Christmas. All right, that's how you make that dough hard, is by adding a lot of salt to it. So basically the same thing's going to happen to your pizza dough. If you add too much salt to your pizza dough, you're going to get a very hard end product. It's going to be, you're basically going to make a brick. And believe me, way back when I first started making pizza, I made a lot of bricks. I mean, I made a lot of rookie mistakes, and it was just a method of making it over, trying different things, you know, making sure that I paid attention to what I did this time so I could duplicate it the next time. So water, very important. Bread flour, the next thing. Like I said, you can use other types of flour, but bread flour is where you want to be with a pizza crust. Yeast. Now, if you don't want to buy a whole bottle of yeast at one time, they have the packages, you know, and I think those hold 2 teaspoons, which is, I think, the amount that I use in my recipe. Sugar, any kind of sugar. This is white sugar. I typically use the raw sugar. And basically, like I said, that's just to feed your yeast. Oil. The type of oil that you use will kind of influence your end product as well. I use a very light olive oil. I don't mean light in calorie, I mean light in color, because it doesn't have a lot of taste influence, where a darker, say, extra virgin olive oil will definitely influence the taste of your finished product. All right, so I think I covered pretty much all you need to know about your ingredients. So what I'm going to do is break away here, get a couple things on the counter, and go over the cooking process of your pizza dough. All right, so hang in there. I'll be right back. So now let's get into the cooking aspect of pizza. Let's start with our pans. Most of you probably have a pan like this. This is your standard pizza pan. When you're cooking your pizza on a pan like this, the main thing I can suggest is make sure you put a very light coating of oil on the bottom of the pan. One, that'll help your dough from sticking to it, and 2, it'll help the bottom of the crust get a nice crisp brown to it. Put it on the bottom shelf. Your oven should be at its highest temperature. Pizza likes to be cooked hot and fast, okay? So my oven goes up to 550. That's where I have it set at when I'm cooking my pizza. Your oven probably goes up to at least 525, maybe 550, highest temperature. A little bit of oil, put it on the bottom rack, and about halfway through, just give it a turn. That way, because in case your coil isn't even across the bottom, by giving it a turn, it'll help even out the bottom of your crust. Deep dish, same thing. Nice light coat of oil on the bottom, keep your dough from sticking, help it crisp up a little bit, and on the bottom rack. This is a 12-inch cake pan that I picked up at the store. I use this to make my pan pizzas. Next, we have stones. This is your typical stone that you will get at Walmart or wherever. It's a ceramic stone. It's about a 1/4 inch, maybe 5/8 inch thick. It's about 14 inches in diameter. I've used it a couple times. I don't typically make my pizza on this. I actually bought this for another project. And these stones, they're okay if you're just making one pizza. The big mistake people make with these stones is they'll put their dough on the stone and then put the stone in the oven and wonder why it's taking 20-30 minutes for the pizza to cook. You got to put your stone in the oven first and bring it up to temperature before you put your pizza crust on it. That way, as soon as the dough hits the stone, it's instantly starting to cook. All right. And the tip I can give you with these ceramic stones when you buy it, before you ever cook a pizza on it, you need to season it. You can see this one's been seasoned. What I did was I just took some pepperoni, covered the whole thing with some pepperoni like I would a pizza, put it in the oven at about 300 degrees and just let it go for about an hour. What that does is it releases the oils from the pepperoni and it seeps into the stone. So it seasons your stone. It basically almost kind of gives you like a non-stick surface. Don't ever wash your stone. You'll see why in a minute. It's very important. You don't need to wash it. You can scrape it off if you want, but you don't need to wash it. All right, so that's your ceramic stone. This is my stone. This is the stone I've had for 8 years now that I make all my pizzas on. You can see it's very well used. And if you notice, there's a crack in it. Why? Because I washed it. Don't ever wash your stones. What happened, made a rookie mistake. This was a long time ago. I washed the stone. It wasn't completely dry. I put it in the oven, turned the oven on, started heating it up, and the next thing you know, the thing cracked. I was sad, but I still use it. This is a piece of flagstone, fieldstone, stepping stone, whatever you want to call it, sandstone. I got this off of a job site. Now when I picked this up, this is about 16 by 16 now, but it was a big piece of stone. It was a lot thicker. I cut it, I trimmed it. I made the mistake by making it too thin. It was about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches when I first got it, but the thing was just so heavy to get in and out of the oven. I thinned it out a little bit. It doesn't hold as much heat as it used to when it was thicker. I can still get 2 pizzas done on it, no problem, but a third one, I got to let it come up to temperature. It's an awesome stone. If you can ever get your hands on a stone like this, and if you're going to be making pizza on a regular basis, it's going to work a lot better than these ceramic stones because you'll be able to do more pizza on it. It is very crucial, like I said, to heat your stone before you ever put your pizza on it. It has to be up to temperature. Now, the ceramic stones, they're probably not going to take that long. You can put that right in and just crank it right up, and it'll probably take maybe 30-40 minutes to get up to temperature. My stone takes a lot longer than that. It takes about 2 hours for me to get this, 1.5 hours, 2 hours to get it up to full temperature. When it was thicker, it was a lot longer. I put it in. I started out at about 250, and then every 30 minutes I crank it up another 100 degrees until it's reached the 550 mark, and then I let it sit there for at least 30 minutes before I attempt to put a pizza on it. So it's so much worth getting a stone, and if you can, like I said, if you can get your hands on a stone like this, you'll be real happy with it. Now next, you're going to need something to make your pizzas on. All right, this is a pizza peel. This is a board. I make my pizza on the board. I take it out with the peel. Now if you don't want to get a board, that's fine, you can use your peel. When you're getting ready to turn out your dough, you put it on your board, you flour it. I use cornmeal on mine, or your pizza peel. You do your thing with your dough, and then you got to get it into the oven. A lot of people, I don't know, if you can't make it on the counter and then try to get it onto stone, there's just no way it's going to happen. Make your pizza on your pan, get it into the oven at the back of the stone, and just start shaking your dough off, and it'll slide right off. You do the same thing with your pizza peel. They have them in wood, they have them in metal. Just make sure you get one that's big enough to hold your pizza, to get it onto your stone. And the same thing, put your cornmeal, or if you want to use flour, I don't use flour because it burns, but put your flour on there and you make your pizza, and when you get it into the oven, just tilt it up and start shaking it like that, and your pizza will slide right off, and then you're good to go. All right, so I think that'll pretty much cover it. Pans, stones, hot oven. Like I said, pizza likes to be cooked hot and fast, so that's the gist of it. Now, I think I covered everything. If I left anything out, you can let me know in the comments below. If you need a little more detail on something, ask me in the comments below. We'll have a conversation. My pizza dough is an all-day thing. There is nothing quick and easy about my pizza dough. Now, if I want to eat by 6 o'clock, I got to start making it at noon. So that's why I only make pizza on Sunday. But if you want a quick and easy, okay kind of pizza, I did a 2-ingredient pizza review, or two-ingredient pizza crust review. I'll post that link over here. If you want to see me make my pizza the way I make it, I'll put that over here. It's a lengthy video. It's about 30 minutes long, but it takes you through the mixing process, through the kneading process, the proofing, the cooking, the whole thing. I mean, it's worth watching if you want to make really good pizza. And I tried to be as specific on the details as I could so everybody could follow it. All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, if you have any questions, put in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm going to put that subscribe button about right there. You can go ahead and press it. Links on this side and that side. This has been another episode of Mostly from Scratch. I am your host, Mr. Munchies, so everybody plate up and chow down.